Hello, my name is Chedobin Nestorovic. I'm a professor at the ESSEC Business School in Singapore, and today we will answer the question, is Saudi Arabia a theocratic state? Saudi Arabia is always labeled as the country which is identified as a theocratic country. So we try first to find out what is a theocracy, and second, is Saudi Arabia really a theocratic state? Theocracy comes from the Greek word theokrasia, and it means the rule of God. It means that the administrative hierarchy of the religion is equivalent to the administration of the state. However, if we follow some of the most important scholars in this field, such as Larry Becker, it is impossible to have the equivalence between the secular power and the spiritual power, because it is impossible to represent the will of God. As Larry Becker remarks in his article Theocratic Constitutionalism, in the bare literal sense of the word, there never has been and never can be a theocracy in human affairs. For God is a spirit, eternal and divine. He doesn't sit immediately in any national senate or upon any political throne to rule. As far as theocracy in Islam is concerned, there is a natural antinomy between the two terms, because all the scholars agree that it is difficult, if not impossible, to separate the secular side from the spiritual side. As an example, we will quote the French scholar Rémi Brague, who is talking about this in his book, which is called La Loi de Dieu, and he says that it is practically a nonsense to separate these two elements. Another scholar, and his name is Detlef Khalid, is also insisting on the fact that it is impossible to separate them, because in Islam it is impossible to represent God. Would it be formally, that is in a human form, or would it be institutionally? There are 26 countries where Sharia law plays a role in personal status, that is inheritance or marriage, and 19 countries where Sharia law plays no role in the legal system. So Saudi Arabia is one of the only 12 countries where the full Sharia law is applied. As the legislative power is concerned, there is no constitution in Saudi Arabia. Instead of this, we have a basic law of government, which has been promulgated in 1992 by the King Fahd. And in the Article 1 of this basic law of government, it is indicated clearly that the Holy Quran and the Sunnah are the constitution of Saudi Arabia. The article number 45 of the same basic law of government is also giving details about the different religious institutions in the country, among them the senior ulema council, which is having the upper hand concerning the legislative part. The power in Saudi Arabia originates from the Treaty of Diriyah, which has been signed in 1774, and this was a specific alliance between the House of Saud and the House of Wahab. Mohammed bin Saud said to Abdullah Wahab, "This oasis is yours. Do not fear your enemies. By the name of God, if all Najd was summoned to throw you out, we will never agree to expel you." And in response, Mohammed Ibn Abdul Wahhab replied, "You are the settlement's chief and wise man. I want you to grant me an oath that you will perform jihad against the unbelievers. In return, you will be imam, leader of the Muslim community, and I will be leader in religious matters." This is how, from 1774, the power in Saudi Arabia is shared by the House of Saud on one side and the descendants of the House of Wahhab on the other side. There are about 7,000 to 10,000 members of ulema, that is religious authorities in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and they don't all descend from the Wahhab family. Today the Wahhab family is called the Al-Shaikh family, and the members of the Al-Shaikh family are not all of them in the religious circles. Many of them are in the administration, they're in business, they're in the military, so we find them everywhere. The senior council of ulema is responsible also in order to prepare the legislation for the king. So the king has the upper hand even if the senior ulema council is preparing the documents for him. As far as the executive power is concerned, it is concentrated in the hands of the Al Saud family. The Al Saud family is a very big one. Several thousands of people are gravitating around all the descendants coming from Al Saud. They are also represented in all layers of administration in the country, in the business as well in the military, of course. So this is the family which is ruling the country, and the religious bodies, they don't have an influence on it. Finally, as far as the judiciary power is concerned, and since there is a separation of powers in Saudi Arabia, it means that the senior council of ulema is having the upper hand for the proposition of the different documentations and legislations for the king, but the king is appointing the 23 members who are making part of the senior ulema council. The senior ulema council is not the only one who is taking decisions. We also have judges, we also have the lawyers. So all of them have to pass through the fatwa council in order to adopt the most recent adaptations of the law in Saudi Arabia. So there is on one side the senior ulema council, and on the other side there is the institution of the Grand Mufti of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which has been created in 1953. And usually the Grand Mufti is coming from the Al-Shaikh family, that is the descendant of Wahhab, even if it happens from time to time that the king is appointing someone else. In order to sum up, from the legislative and from the executive power point of view, it seems that the secular power has the upper hand in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia because the king promulgated the basic law of government and the king is appointing the religious leaders. So in that case, it is very close to the situation of Caesaropapism that we used to have during the Byzantine Empire. On top of this, since we have the Treaty of Durraya from 1774, which is putting on the same level the secular power and the spiritual power, means that the spiritual power to some extent is independent from the secular power, and even if the king is appointing the members of the senior ulema council, he doesn't have full freedom in establishing whatever legislation he wants in the country. So as a basic conclusion, there is some form of theocracy in Saudi Arabia, even if from the legislative and from the executive point of view, the secular power has a very great presence in the country.